live. Alright, let's get right to it. The season premiered, which I would have never guessed this. Holy shit, wait. How many episodes are on July 9th? Holy 19th. That's 6.
Oh, dear Lord. Look at all those tasty episodes. That must be fun. I'm going to listen to myself so I can make sure that we sound the same.
Oh,
dear Lord. Look at all those. Oh, yeah, we do. Okay. What was the premiere? Was it? Oh my goodness, 6 episodes? Yo, that's just bad. It's just bad time management, bro.
Tentacle Vision. Squidward's TV show. Would have never guessed that being the season premiere. Oh god. That's not a good one.
Yeah, absolutely not. So in this episode, what happens here? It is Squidward wanting to have his own TV show, and all of a sudden everybody randomly hops in, and then police say that Squidward is the one who is causing the disruption, and they kick him out of his own house.
Because that's funny.
I don't know. It's in the 3 range or below. This is an awful episode.
4. I mean, just alone the Patrick scene with the mouth. Oh god.
Yeah.
Next, I heart dancing. That's at least Wikipedia says. But I think we know what it is.
Okay.
We all know what it actually means. I love dancing.
Yeah. And in this episode, Squidward tries to make SpongeBob. He tries to teach SpongeBob to dance exactly like him, so SpongeBob will be completely exhausted. And Squidward overdoes it. He intentionally overdoes it, even though SpongeBob's dancing is fine. He keeps making him rehearse because SpongeBob, being as old as he is, comes to him for advice. Then when the day of the dance happens, SpongeBob is too tired, and Squidward really subs in. But he does get what he deserves at the end, with Squidward reciprocating the entire episode. So I'll give it like a 5 range.
I'll give it a 5, but you go Squidward. Thank you. That's all I gotta say. Thank Christ, especially for this season too. All right. Growth spout. Oh.
Yeah, this was not good. Now, okay, for Mr. Krabs in this season, I could say confidently this is probably one of his better episodes. But this is season 7, so that's not saying anything at all. What happened in this is that Pearl was going through a growth spout and she needed food, and so Krabs tried to go everywhere to get her food, and then ultimately SpongeBob made her a Krabby Patty, and then that's it. So I'm gonna give it like a 4 range. Honestly, not very good.
5. It's not bad, but as I stick by it, Pearl episodes are horrendous. They did let's not go horrendous, but they're not. They're like Gary episodes. They're not entertaining. Just kind of have one. Okay, we're off this one. Okay, next episode, Stuck in the Ringer.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, I could say that honestly, this is even more infamous than the worst episode, solely based on the fact that everybody knows that this sucks. So what happens here is that SpongeBob gets stuck in the ringer, and then Patrick comes in, and then that's where the episode just kind of dies. He comes in and then puts frickin' forever glue on SpongeBob. Now, there is such thing as intellectually challenged, but this is just outright sick. Okay, he traps him in that thing for as marketing, as advertised, forever. And so we get to see in a painful episode SpongeBob trying to work, and him unfortunately frickin' not doing that successful due to the limitations Ringer presents. And we get a disgusting scene where he frickin' squeezes mustard in Squidward's eye and they fall off. This is just gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it gets from bad to worse. They go to a park. We see SpongeBob try to eat ice cream, and it's painful that it's just he can't even eat properly with the thing on. It just blocks his air. How does he breathe with that though? If that blocks him from food. Anyway, we see SpongeBob get physically hurt on the rides, like when he got a black eye from Patrick trying to throw was it him or Patrick? It was someone throwing the baseball, and they slapped him right in the eye. And then he got launched off of a tilt-a-whirl because he was unable to grab the holder. And then wow. And then SpongeBob finally stands up for himself, saying that Patrick ruined his day and that he's not appreciative of his dumb stuff. And then right when Patrick starts to get it, the town, like he runs off, the town people, they say this: No, kid, it's not your body that's the problem. It's your heart. It's,
Just hypocrites, assholes.
is easily one of the worst lines in SpongeBob history. The worst line being next episode. But this is definitely among the worst because what it implies is that SpongeBob should not stick up for himself, even though Patrick's been a colossal idiot the entire time. When Patrick actually tries to help SpongeBob, it's SpongeBob. Patrick breaks into tears because SpongeBob is just. I don't even know what to say about this. He just is freaking like dead in the eyes, looking at the TV, clearly losing his mind. And then Patrick starts to cry, and then they slide out, and then the thing eventually freaking he cries more, and then it slides out even more, and then SpongeBob gets free. And then the thing about this which makes it sick is that SpongeBob looks directly dead eye in the camera, and then he says, "I guess crying does solve your problems."
You know, forgetting everything else that happened in the episode.
How do you do that? These are kids freaking watching this episode, and you tell them that? Like, are you kidding me, bro? It might have the worst moral of any SpongeBob ever, and for that, it's an absolute failure. The title card is purposefully ugly. The episode is painful to watch. It's slow. It's pathetic. It's sad, and you can't get any entertainment from watching this. You just feel frustrated at the end. My goodness. Suck ass episode. This is a 0 point. Just no, actually, I did like the design of the fair. I could say one thing about it. I did like one cleverly timed joke that even that was flawed. It was Patrick saying the fair will be here all around, and yet it says like the fair always here. We never see episodes about that, so I kind of have to deduct that right back. But this episode sucks. 1.1 out of 10. Do not watch it.
0. I don't have a redeeming factor for this episode. The only thing that could have been redeeming is if the citizens... Here's the thing. I don't know if I want to go up on it, because the citizens didn't exactly have context, because all they see is SpongeBob here in a ringer, yelling at Patrick, so they don't know how he got in there. For all they know, maybe Patrick didn't cause that, and that was SpongeBob's dumbass who got himself in there. And then all of that, I don't know. I want to go 0, but I will go 1. Much as I hate the, Bikini Bottom down citizens, I don't know why. I cannot bring myself to go 0, because between 0 and 1. Depends whenever I watch it again, which I don't ever plan to do that ever again. Next, an episode that's just someone's in Sandy's kitchen. Someone's in the kitchen with Sandy.
It's not next.
That is next episode.
Really? That's the next one?
Which also, it sounds like a porn.
I thought it was freaking. Oh, really? I don't know. Like, usually when I look up scorecards, I looked up a scorecard before this. I thought it was another episode.
Oh, no, I'm just using Wikipedia.
So it is Sandy's in the kitchen. So that episode. Yikes. Wow. Wow, it's just hard for me to actually pick a point to start this episode before I freaking rip into it. Look, they had shellback shenanigans. They had, what else? Grandma's secret recipe, and they had this in the same freaking season. All of these were supposed to be, like, these were essentially rip-offs of Imitation Crabs. Like, come on. Get more original, guys. Dear Lord. Well, I'm trying to think of something to say, but I can't think of anything right now. There's just too much to hate about it. So, the plot for this is that Sandy takes a shower, and then Plankton decides to steal her coat of fur, and then, wow. And then he tries to convince SpongeBob that this is Sandy, and then in an awkward way try to get the Krabby Patty formula, gaining his trust, Sandy being SpongeBob's friend. And then Sandy gets freaking laughed at by the whole town because her fur was stolen. And then when she finally does catch Plankton in the act, she gets arrested too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bad episode.
Such a bad. I'm gonna give it 1.3 out of 10.
I'll go between 2 and 4. Not good.
abysmal episode.
The inside job.
Oh well, even in total garbage, disgusting freak seasons like this one, we have a couple good stuff, a couple good things. So what happened in this episode is, I guess I'm gonna be doing the plots for these. I remember a lot of episodes. This one I actually saw about like a month ago. It's Plankton. He, tries to find a new approach. He tries to inhibit SpongeBob's brain and take the Krabby Patty information from there because he thinks that will give him the knowledge it takes to make a freaking Krabby Patty because SpongeBob knows how to do it. And it gets pretty creative with it. But before he leaves the Krusty Krab, he runs into Patrick and that little suction cup brain sucker intelligence thing. He initially tried to go Kratz, but he decided SpongeBob was good enough instead. Then at the end of the episode, he runs into Plankton, and then he forgets everything about the Krusty Krab, Krabby Patty, and then becomes stupid like Plankton. But at the same time, there's some nice jokes. The designing is interesting. The whole concept is pretty new. We don't see people going inside of each other's brains. I think he hasn't done something like that since his first episode, honestly. Right?
That's a little kind of, in a way, a little bit of a rip-off of the Plankton's first episode. I think it's a 6. It's decent.
Give it a 7. Because at the same time, he only controlled the brain. He wasn't harnessing the freaking... Like, he never went inside the brain in that episode. We saw a bunch of Gary. We saw Gary, little brain Gary roaming around.
Yeah.
No, there is some interesting stuff. I'm going to give it a 7. Not bad.
I don't think it's... I mean, I'm glad you can say a 7. Because that's... For me, it's a decent 6. Because that's... Yeah, that's my rating.
It's fair.
Next, Greasy Buffoons.
Before I don't hate this episode. There is one genuinely good joke about Krabs talking about how only an extra hard-working employee would stay to clean up the grease. The Squidward vanishes in the air. That's a good joke.
Yeah, that was.
But the entire surface of the episode is not good. He decides to dump his overloaded grease bash, this being Mr. Krabs. He decides to dump it into the chum bucket. But Plankton is actually able to make food out of it. And then people are addicted to it. So Krabs decides to get some more grease, then put some food, make some grease-specific food from his stuff. So they have a grease competition going back and forth, and then the health inspector comes, and then they have to stop doing the grease. They have to freaking shut down the grease competition. But then SpongeBob absorbs it being the sponge. Then Patrick licks it, and then that's the end. So I'm gonna give it like a 4.5. It's bad.
4. The ending's weird. The episode I thought was in like season 5 for some reason. Keep Bikini Bottom beautiful.
Yikes. Squilliam's worst episode. I'm gonna just say that. Just say it like that. It is easily the worst episode.
And also House Fancy.
Squilliam has been in. Yeah, but I think this one's a little bit worse because it was slow and boring and dumb, honestly. So, okay, Squidward has to do community service, and then Squilliam randomly shows up to brag about how we cleaned up the whole city in 1 week, I believe. And then he shows up a statue, and then Squidward says, "I'm going to get a statue for cleaning up in 1 day." And then so SpongeBob comes out of nowhere and then takes the garbage and then puts it freaking on top of Squidward's. No, he actually takes the garbage, he makes Squidward's house with it, and then puts the actual house on top of the garbage. And then we get a pretty gross scene with Squidward doing a bunch of stuff with not noticing that it is garbage because he has his eyes closed the whole time for some reason. Just about. I don't know. It's just the dumb. It's slow. And like, why would you make an episode like this? The gum scene where Squidward steps in the gum is so drawn out, dude. Do you have any idea how many freaking people are changing the channel? They're reaching out for the remote during that whole time because it goes on forever. And the police officer, dude.
That joke.
The worst police officer episode.
Ground.
Even when Squidward cleaned it up, he still it was the same police officer freaking tagging him in the nose with community service slips. Like, bruh. Then the ending was also just stupid. SpongeBob builds a garbage statue. Literally a garbage statue. Statue made out of garbage of Squidward. And then it freaking somehow melts the stone statue of Squilliam. And Squilliam gets the thing. gets the freaking community service by the police officer. Then one little can falls off the freaking garbage statue of Squidward, and then both SpongeBob and Squidward get tagged with freaking community service slips. It's just a stupid and awful episode. 2.2 out of 10. Just
2. And that, I think after this there was no longer a Squilliam episode. It was that damn bad.
Yeah.
I don't even think we've seen Squilliam as a character ever since after this.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen him show up in an episode, honestly, after this. Damn, what an awful way to finish him off. And he made like the greatest entrance ever. His first episode was Band Geeks, okay, bruh? So you send him off with this garbage. This literal garbage, by the way. This is the whole episode. The summary, literally garbage.
He had so many perfect times to come back after this too, and then execute on it. But next episode, which was the episode that you've talked about a lot, that I'm also giving a 0, A Pal for Gary.
Forget that. You know what? Forget it. This is easily one of the worst episodes in any cartoon ever. I'm putting it up with Family Guy's freaking. Let's see. We got this episode. I'm gonna put it next to their Screams of Silence episode. We're gonna put it with Simpsons freaking Lisa Goes Gaga. Honestly, these might be even worse than those adult episodes because of the awful implications, the incredibly flawed structure, and just it being absolutely atrocious in every way. I don't give zeros often, so this is the 1 0 I'm giving to this series. Never before has the series stooped to this low. So what happens in this abomination of an episode is that SpongeBob thinks that Gary's lonely, and then he steals a pet. He freaking goes to a store, and then right as the woman's talking about how it's dangerous and hostile, he freaking steals it. Like, this is the protagonist, and already we're not supposed to like him because he's stealing pets just because. And then he brings it home, and then freaking this puffball, it suddenly gets sharp razor sword teeth, and then tries to chew Gary, and then SpongeBob somehow is oblivious of that, and then he freaking blames Gary. He says that Gary's not being welcoming towards Puffy Fluffy, like, for real, dude. And then it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse when SpongeBob goes to sleep. It's freaking molts out of its little tiny puffball form, and then becomes this hideous monster. Like, this is for children, and this monster is freaking designed to scare adults. Like, look at it, dude. It's in the thumbnail behind the A and S, but the freaking mouth had 4 different black hole, like freaking razor blade tongues. Okay, and then it chased Gary throughout the entire night. And when SpongeBob woke up, guess what the first thing he did when he saw a bunch of rubble lists? He blamed Gary. Yep, that's the protagonist at his finest. Granted, he doesn't know, but he's about to. So when we see SpongeBob walk up to whatever room it is, I don't even know what that room looks like. It's just sometimes the interior of his house is kind of gross. We freaking get a close-up of Gary inside the mouth of Puffy Fluffy, and then when SpongeBob breaks the door down, this really is the blow. He freaking scolds Gary, not Puffy Fluffy, Gary, while he's being eaten alive. Wow, dude. Way to freaking crucify your own protagonist for the show. How do you do this? How do you freaking do this to a character who's supposed to be likable? You make him act so completely oblivious, despite the fact that he's looking with his own eyes at the scenario. Even Puffy Fluffy has enough of this. Even when the horrible, terrible freaking villain monster was designed specifically to make everybody feel uncomfortable, has enough. And he puts Gary down and picks SpongeBob up. When he has enough, bruh, you know that they are abandoning all logic together. And then even as SpongeBob's being eaten alive by the thing, scolding Gary for misbehavior. Like, what the heck? Okay, you know, I think maybe I should have said this already. One of the people who wrote this episode were hired for a one-time appearance, I believe. And it's the same guy who freaking participated in Ren Seeks Help. Most infamous cartoon episode ever. And so what happens? Gary saves the day, and then Puffy Fluffy is nowhere to be seen because Gary reps. He does his cowboy thing from his cowboy show. He strangles all four tongues together, and then that Puffy Fluffy abomination crap hole runs away from the house. And then right after that, SpongeBob continues to scold him, and then force him to work at the Krusty Krab. And then Krab says he won't get paid, and then it just ends. Like,
yeah, I agree. It's a 0.
It's rotten to the fundamental core. It is broken to the fundamental core, and it is quite simply as unpleasant I've ever seen this show get. That's why I'm giving it a 0.
The episode that destroyed SpongeBob's character for the rest of the season.
Oh my goodness. And this wasn't even for Gary, but my goodness, this episode is one of the worst in any cartoon. One of the absolute worst, and easily, well, I don't know about easily. There's one episode I think might contend it, but I'd say this is got to be the worst in the entire series.
I mean, I have many episodes to contend this one compared to yours, and I have my reasons, and I think you understand those reasons.
Oh, definitely, but my goodness. This episode, it is a freaking black hole for cartoon episodes. It is a black hole for SpongeBob. How does the joyous sponge, who freaking, by the way, there was a entire special about him doing anything for Gary. They even wrote a song about it. Okay. And then how do you get from that to this? How intentionally bad is the writing on this episode, where they have to abandon all logic just to make the show unlikable? This made the show unlikable at this point because they weren't getting any better. Season 7 was even worse than Season 6, and Season 6 sucked. But when you have this episode be among the very first episodes of the season, by the way, this was the first episode of 2010. Okay, did anybody think the series would get better in the freaking decade? Because surely it'll get better in 2010s. Wrong. You get this absolute disgusting, this affront to the human race.
It's amazing how fucking. And also, its counterpart was Keep Bikini Bottom Beautiful. That has got to be the worst pairing ever.
It's definitely one of them. Oh my goodness.
Also,
it might be. Dang.
Also, a whole episode got skipped because I did not see it. Model Sponge, which is back in 2009, which was the last 2009 episode.
All right. Well, this episode sucks. This it's about freaking SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs is talking to a phone. Yeah, and Mr. Krabs really talking about a bird, and he let free out of the Krusty Krab. And then SpongeBob decides to leave and become a sponge model.
Because of Patrick too.
And
Patrick
this
pushed
sucks.
him to do it.
Yeah. We get the thing about the SpongeBob in this time. The singing scenes were just awful. Like we already talked about in Choir Boys, but we'll get to this later in a certain special this season has. But in this episode, he sings and it is drawn out. Is this supposed to be a joke? Because I'm not laughing. Forget it. This episode sucks. I'm giving it a 3.5 out of 10. Don't frickin' watch this.
I'm gonna give it a 4. I never really hated it, but it doesn't mean it's good either. That ending too, really disturbing. But an episode, honestly, I hate with the burning passion, which adds more and more fuel to why I fucking hate Patrick's character so much. Yours, mine, and mine.
I came already? That's only like a couple episodes. I thought I came into the second half of the season. So we already in the first few episodes, we got stuck in the ringer, and yours, mine, and mine.
Fuck this episode. I mean...
Wow. Oh my goodness. Like,
I mean, by this point, Patrick is already hated for how he acted stuck in the ringer. Add this to it, man. People...
Not to mention the card. Jesus.
I hated this episode. I mean, what else are you gonna say about it? I mean, it's...
Well, okay.
I mean,
so what happens in this episode?
I mean,
is that Mr.
Not even how Patrick acts. It's just the plot itself. SpongeBob and Patrick fighting over having a damn Krusty toy. How the hell do you even make that work? Yeah, it did look like.
Then everybody, and then of course the worst part about the episode is when Patrick eats the burger. I mean, it's literally a freaking burger, And then a couple of straws does not make a burger not a burger. You just jam a couple of straws in the bun, and then I don't know, whatever. So Patrick the episode's about sharing. SpongeBob decides to share his crusty meal, kitty meal, whatever. I don't know. The design of the fries are inconsistent, by the way. Could we talk about that for 1 second? The fries are so inconsistently designed. Like, I know the series is freaking inconsistent, but for frick's sake, if you're gonna make the Krabby Patty look the same, you might as well at least have an idea of the fries, the crusty fries or whatever.
I don't remember the fries. In my years
they look different all the freaking time.
Like, you didn't make me realize that until now. I know what the drink design is, I know what the burger design is, but I cannot visualize what the fries look like. You just hit my mind now. Wow.
Keep changing it. Like, bruh, keep your design. That's one of the many things wrong about this episode, but not the big thing wrong with this episode. The big thing wrong is that it is a misconceptual understanding of the term sharing. It's supposed to be funny. I don't know. It sucks. What really? So Patrick, by this point, he wants the kitty meal for himself. Then justifiably, he says he has it all day, and then justifiably, SpongeBob could have it the next day. And he freaking dances at midnight with the freaking toy. Dances midnight with the burger. Okay, freaking to love a patty burger. Much.
Yeah, exactly. The same vibe with the ending as well, with him eating it.
Well, at least it didn't go bad. That was just gross. So throughout the episode, it shows that Patrick is painfully oblivious. He is painfully malicious, and the stupidity is not an excuse. Okay.
Because Patrick decides not to. He's just a fucking asshole.
Decides to lie to SpongeBob. Says, "No, I'm not gonna keep it. I'm not gonna give you the toy." Then freaking runs away from SpongeBob when he tries to get the toy that he was promised for the day. Then they fight. They have like a little tumble brawl, and they go to Sandy's, and then they don't put on.
Oh sure, I forgot about the Sandy scene. Oh god.
I mean, I guess that was I don't know. And then they continue to fight all the way back to the Krusty Krab, and then Patrick says, "If I can't have it, no one can." Because he's unable to share the toy. He doesn't do what's promised. At one point, they even go to freaking taking the toy for each second because Patrick can't keep a promise. It goes mine, and then mine, and then mine. They keep taking the toy. It goes back and forth, and it gets on my nerves when they do.
I was just saying, I just don't understand why the writers thought this was a good idea. Yet again.
Understand why the writers thought this was not even a good enough idea. An idea that you can actually publish on TV and call it an episode of the most famous series ever. Okay, and
I hate the ending. I hate the ending too.
And then, of course, Krabs gives him. He says that it was randomly selling. I guess, surprisingly enough, Krabs was fine in this episode, but they sold like a lot of toys, and so then freaking Patrick said, "Allow me to pay for it," and then or something like that, and then he takes SpongeBob's wallet, and then he says, "Aren't you aware of the term sharing?" The episode is with each other, with the characters giving each other a blank freaking stare for 3 seconds.
And Mr. Krabs, giving a smirk, like what the fuck? Like that's the best way to describe this episode. We're Patrick. No, we're SpongeBob. Patrick is I don't know who they are, and then the writers are Mr. Krabs, sitting there smiling like. That's God's honest work. Fuck this episode.
I'm gonna give this at 1.7. Now
1.51, I don't know. Fuck. I really do.
Oh, it sucks.
Honestly, do you ever see this episode getting a lot more hate than it should? Cause it's described more how Patrick is, but they don't
honestly
they don't
well, okay. I'm gonna say this. Phantom Strider, because I did a YouTuber appreciation, he put this episode as #1 in his worst Patrick list. So honestly, it's fair.
Who knows? Here's the thing,
again, Stuck in the Ringer was an honorable mention. But then again, he also did mention that in a review, and he usually doesn't like to repeat things unless they're like Family Guy or Ren and Stimpy, which abysmal.
So I've seen this meme. Remember the Patrick scene with it was the hall monitor? The cop showed us something, he screamed, is showing the picture, the title card saying, "Have you seen this episode? Ah, horrible." I'll send it over to you.
This episode sucks. How do you do this? You don't... Okay, I've said this before. There's a difference between writing a character to be intellectually challenged are just intellectually deranged. And Patrick's not challenged, he's deranged. We've already gotten this episode and stuck in the ringer, and we're only a couple episodes in this putrid season. And how are we supposed to like Patrick, especially when he shows up a lot in this season? How do you don't repair him in this season? You can't repair him, especially with the crap that you give him for the rest of the freaking season. It doesn't make any sense how you do this. Like, what an awful. I just don't know, bro. It's just so bad on so many levels.
I just realized this episode came out on 9/11. That's not good. Next, cracked crabs.
Is this the cheapskate one?
Yeah.
Right, you know what? Good episode. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I'm just going to start with that because I want to bring some positivity after one of the worst episodes ever conceived.
I agree.
So, what happened here is that Krabs wanted... Now, this actually showed Krabs off for being good. Unfortunately, he had a really inconsistent season. Some of it was okay, and some of it was just downright disgusting from Krabs. What happened here is that Krabs went to his annual cheapskate festival, and then it was a bunch of crabs, and they were doing cheap acts. You know, it was kind of entertaining to watch some of the stuff, like the $1 per step, 3 times the price. So some of the stuff here was actually pretty decent. And he brought SpongeBob along with him. You know, he wanted to teach SpongeBob some stuff. Granted, it's kind of immoral, but it's nice that he brought him along anyway, you know? He didn't have to do that. Especially for SpongeBob, who initially messed up his chances, but also contributed to the reason. He was technically disqualified for the winner of the Cheesecake Award, but then he got it back after an incredible performance. They freaking stuffed the whole room into their suitcases. That's being cheap to the max. I like that about that. That's just great thinking by the writers. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
I agree. Good episode.
Yeah.
Next, the Curse of Bikini Bottom.
Curse of Bikini Bottom, you said?
Yep.
Okay. In this episode, Patrick and SpongeBob accidentally shave the Dutchman's head with the lawnmower because he was appearing slightly... I don't know, it was just weird. And then Dutchman in return turns them into ghosts. It's just weird for part of it, but at the same time, not too bad. I can't hate this episode. I'm gonna give it... Well, actually, let me finish. So he promises to turn him back if they can help him prepare for his date night. They tidy him up a bit. It looks kind of weird. And then he decides, here you guys go. You get to go back. And then that just one of the weirdest endings I've ever seen of any show. He runs from his date, who is this... I don't even know what to say. It's just a weird giant fish monster. The background looks kind of crappy, and then he just runs away. I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. I didn't find it to be offensive. I found it to be just okay.
6. Yeah. Next episode, Squidward in Clarinet Land.
Well, this is the weirdest episode in the entire show. Just the outright weirdest. And you could tell that they probably watched a little bit of Alice in Wonderland before they made this for inspiration, you know? Because clearly this is going to have some inspiration, you know, with all the stuff that happened. Squidward wants to be able to store his clarinet in a safe space. So Krabs gets a single locker for him. And the SpongeBob, well, technically he's allowed to share the locker. So SpongeBob freaking decides to go in there and fix the locker up. Then he expands the locker, so it's one locker that on the inside contains like 1 million lockers. It's so interesting to see. And then the episode just loses all comprehension, honestly. They go into this land of clarinets where he gets swallowed by the eagle, who claims he has no respect for clarinets and that they should roam free. And then he tries to grab SpongeBob, then he freaking is caught, and then he lands in a chair with evil mirror doppelgangers. Then it just descends into total madness, and that's one thing I can't hate this episode for. Squidward running around all the place, through jumping through the cosmos to bouncing inside a pinball machine. Then when he finally gets out, he's freaking exhausted. He doesn't know what just happened. And then when it is time for his recital at the end of the episode, he gets scared away by SpongeBob, saying that he was actually just keeping his clarinet safe. So 7.5, definitely among the very best episodes of the season.
Yeah, I'm going between. I'll go 7. I really like this episode. I do think the fast pacedness was great. And yeah. Next, what was supposed to be SpongeBob's last episode, technically, SpongeBob's Last Stand, which has one of the worst songs in the show's history.
Yeah. This was delayed way too much. This honestly probably could have even worked in season 5. I don't know. You know what? Maybe they should have just deleted Pest the West and had this. If they're gonna have it, you just do it at a time when the show actually, well, season 5 kind of sucks, but at least they had some grasp on conceptual straws. This season just bombed it.
I mean,
oh my goodness.
Episode is just aggravating because the general basis of getting a highway in Jellyfish Fields can make sense, but they never give a reason as to why. They just say it happens, and when it's asked, there's no reason. If there was a main reason as to why it was happening with good logical reasons, if we just had that one scene, then it wouldn't be as bad. But it just seems so pointless to do it. They're just doing it so we can have this plot of trying to get Jellyfish Fields back instead of seeing both sides of the story. The only side
I get the entire protect the environment case of this episode, but this just does it so wrong. It doesn't focus so much on the environment as much as does words. Like, the songs literally were just random words. Like, there was no coherency in it, honestly. And this was a special, and it was boring. It was stupid. I don't know. I think it's slow, sad. And in the episode, SpongeBob literally says, not to mention it's dumb and stupid and dumb. Okay, which means that they thought that clearly dumb is funny. Okay, dumb is not funny. Now, when you just have people be dumb for the sake of it, and you expect people to laugh at it, don't write this show. All right, just get off and get out of here, bro. It's just painful to watch. So I'm gonna give this episode a 3.5 out of 10. Waste of time, especially for a special. This didn't even have enough content for an 11-minute episode. So why on earth is it getting that second half?
Didn't it get longer than that?
I thought it was just 22 minutes.
I mean, maybe it was 22 minutes, but I remember the shit being 60. But I don't know.
It was not 60. Oh my goodness.
I mean, I don't know.
That would have been unbearable. I mean, well, not to say this episode was not already, but my goodness. I don't know.
This episode just aggravates me because this was just a lot of lost potential. All it needed was just that second subplot, that reasoning, and then maybe, you know, tweaking a lot of writing, and there you go. You actually got yourself a decent special, but no, they don't. Another episode,
yeah.
An episode that could have been a special, but lost potential, Back to the Past. This episode just pisses me off, really.
I don't really hate this episode. I don't hate this episode. I'll give it like...
I hate Patrick in this episode. He makes this episode just so unbearable.
Yeah, it's just confusing. It's one of those time travel episodes. Except it just gets more confusing. But also, I do kind of like that aspect. So what happens is SpongeBob and Patrick go to Merman and Gabarro Boy's lair. They activate the time machine. And that sends them back to when Merman and Barnacle Boy were younger. And then from there, they impact something. They have an impact on something so big. Like Patrick eats the tartar sauce. They are playing a tartar sauce attack. And then when they go back in the future, the entire world's owned by a Man Ray. Grim, but at the same time, could have been worse ideas. I thought it was actually a decent idea. And they use that to add complexion. So when they go back in time again, they create a time loop. Because from the future going to the past means that always at that second, someone is going to go to the past. Because the other versions of SpongeBob also had this. I don't know. This is weird, honestly. It just keeps recurring that they decide to go there to... I don't know. It's just really weird. It's hard to actually put it. They decide to keep going to the past, which creates an infinite loop, apparently. And so they are able to catch Man Ray guilty. Or catch him at crime, you know? And then the episode literally ends with those time boxes being in front of the screen, taking up the entire Earth. You know, I will give it like in the lower 6 range. Can't get mad at this episode. It is kind of random, but you know, there's so much worse in this.
I give it 5 for its lost potential. There could have been a lot in this episode they could have done. And I just felt like they didn't even really do much. They had a good concept, you know, coming from this season. They just kind of executed it decently. Next, the Bad Guy Club for Villains. Oh, I love this episode.
Yeah, definitely one of the best of the season.
Plus,
it's hard
no focus on SpongeBob Patrick. Like,
I mean, you did get them messing up the tape or whatever, but besides that, it was pretty much entirely a recollection of a Merman and Barnacle Boy, a lost episode. And, you know, we already talked about the bad morals of the season, but let's go with the really good one. Can't imprison people for reading. So what happens here is that a group of villains decide to set up a meeting. Merman Man and Barnacle Boy and their superhero crew catch them in the act. They have this cool fight. And then it takes up just about all the episode, and then when they finally do it, they finally actually, you know, defeat the villains reveal that they're gonna have a freaking
book club.
Yeah, so you know what? That's not really. It's extremely inoffensive. It's good, actually. It's good. So I'm gonna give it a 7.2. Good episode.
I'm gonna give it 8. I really do like this episode.
Yeah, you got good stuff in it.
I forgot about this Burby Man Barnacle Boy episode. I really did. Good one.
Yeah.
Now
it definitely is.
You had fun, right? Because next episode's not so fun. Day Without Tears.
Oh my goodness. What a sad, pathetic mess. And I mean sad and pathetic both in the literal sense. That's what this episode all revolved around. It was seeing how many times SpongeBob cried a day. We started the episode by him crying insatiably over some little problem. And of course,
all of us.
Okay. The writers decided to multiply this. And then we get a whole flashback of him crying over nothing. Squidward finally has enough of it, and he says, SpongeBob, I bet you won't cry the whole day. And if SpongeBob wins, Squidward gets to frickin' stay. Squidward has to stay for a play date. But if SpongeBob loses, he has to do a bunch of Squidward's chores. So already, you know, pretty boring. And we go through a bunch of stupid scenes that make... okay, we go through a bunch of stupid, dull... and really just bad scenes. We see SpongeBob freaking act like a 50-year-old mom on Facebook whenever she sees something remotely not happy, trying to freaking cry over, but he holds back his tears. Are we supposed to sympathize with this? You know, there was a time when SpongeBob was not just unreasonably happy or unreasonably sad. Let's take an example from Can You Spare a Dime, where we actually show genuine unsatisfaction and surprising anger towards his boss. You don't see him doing that. Over Squidward staying at his house, he gets angry at Squidward and angry at Krabs. You don't see SpongeBob getting angry. You see him getting either happy or sad. Too hyper emotional, and especially to only have those two emotions, it's extremely dumb. And this episode points that out for the worst. To end the episode, what happens here is that SpongeBob decides to freaking... No, you know, Squidward freaking reads SpongeBob a bedtime story, and it's a sad one, and then he decides to add it by just repeating the quote and cried when like a little boy gets lost or whatever. Was it other and cried or and sad, but you know, you get the point. And then at a couple seconds after midnight, SpongeBob freaking creates this entire flood that floods the entire place. The entire town is flooded by his tears. He literally cries so much. He freaking unleashes this tidal wave of tears on the town, and it's flood. We get a freaking bunch of choir guys singing in a boat, okay, above ground level at how much he's crying. As if we needed to remember that awful Choir Boys episode. We don't need a little shoehorn in. And then Squidward, he ends the episode with like 15 uninterrupted seconds of Squidward crying because he's at a freaking play date, and then they're watching a movie, and then you got popcorn, and SpongeBob is just there. But, you know, to be able to destroy a character and make him so insufferably stupid and childish and naive and just over the top emotional is annoying. It's so annoying. They were already doing this with Funny Pants, and it's just dumb. Look, they're trying to convince kids of actual emotions, but you don't give kids the obvious. If you consistently try to give kids the obvious because you think they're dumb, they're gonna grow up dumb. If you challenge them intellectually, like Invader Zim did, you might actually benefit the kids, teach them something they didn't know before. But this is just pathetic. It's sad. It's just boring. It's 1.7 out of 10. It's an awful episode, and you really do not want to watch it. It's just a genuine waste of time. Oh, okay. So it looks like I am going to be flying solo for a couple minutes. So what happens in the next episode? No, okay, so obviously we know already that we're not exactly going in the right freaking direction with this season. So in the next episode, which is actually Summer Job, we go from SpongeBob seeing him sad to freaking Puff being annoyed throughout the whole thing. And it's just not funny. It's just not funny at all. So this episode specifically revolves around the fact that, Mrs. Puff is tortured by SpongeBob. Whenever she got a class, she tortured. And so when SpongeBob, she has enough, she freaking accidentally breaks the doors of the Krusty Krab. I believe that's what happens. And then Krabs, says that she gotta work it because she can't pay it at the moment. She has to work. And then, gradually the income will come, gradually she'll get freaking income, and then eventually she'll be allowed to leave. But you gotta work for it first. Now, this episode is meant to be slow, boring, dull, all that kind of stuff, all that hippie season 7 stuff. Yeah, okay. We get to see SpongeBob just annoy Mrs. Puff to an endless extent, and we don't see any funny jokes. We don't see anything charming. This is season 7, so the brain cells of this series is pretty much at an all-time low. So let's take the actual figurative. SpongeBob is now just annoying and relentlessly bothersome, and let's apply that to Miss Puff. And Miss Puff gets annoyed throughout the whole episode. It's just not good. So I'll say anywhere before I don't haven't seen this too recently, so I'll say anywhere below 4. Yeah. Because even the ending was sad. It was SpongeBob dropping his note, which Miss Puff ripped up and then threw down in the act of littering. And then when that happens, frickin' she gets sent to the jail, and she likes being in the jail now, the fact that SpongeBob won't be there. But the note said that SpongeBob was going to apply to become a teacher at a freaking jail, a private teacher. And then that's what happens. And then we get to see Miss Puff screaming, and then the episode just ends. So definitely below 4. Forget this episode. It's so bad.
4 could have been better considering the circumstances. Next episode, 1-course meal.
Yeah, look at that. That's a fantastic episode. I'm just kidding. No, this episode sucks. It's really. It was the most infamous freaking episode before Ink Lemonade. I cannot believe the hate that got, and I'm actually all in for it. But that's got biblical levels of hate, even more than 1-course meal. But before that, for a good amount of time, this was the most infamous. Because the implications were just an all-time low. I personally can't say it's 0 simply because of the first minute. What they did in the first minute was very good. A nice little fight scene. Had some creative stuff. And it does suck to see that be wasted on a abhorrent episode like this. Well, the rest of it being abhorrent. But I honestly do like that first minute.
I give it a 0. I don't give a fuck about
fair.
that first minute. This, just a character assassination, all the fucking way. Seriously.
Yeah. Honestly. It's just hard. And then, the battle is ended when Pearl shows up, and then Plankton is afraid of Pearl. Why? Why was he not afraid of Pearl? He was just fine talking to her in the episode where he becomes the boss. Was it the LJ gets greener or something like that? I don't know. Something like that. Great episode, by the way. That was a really good episode. But this sucked. It was stupid. It was dumb. It was just insufferably boring. Okay, if you're gonna do an episode where Mr. Krabs literally stalks Plankton, trying to scare him in a pearl outfit for 16 days, there was literally a title, a freaking time card that said 16 days in this episode, and it just showed Plankton with his long nails, freaking bloodshot eye, beard grown, unable to move because he's freaking paranoid of moving because he's afraid that freaking Krabs dressed up as Pearl, but he doesn't know that. He's afraid that Pearl is gonna snatch him out of nowhere and eat him alive. And then even in his dreams, we get to see a nightmare. It's so unoriginal. Like, you could at least add visuals, but the ones we get are boring. The same color. It's so boring to look at. It is lame. I'm not mad about this episode because it's distasteful. It is absolutely distasteful. I'm mad about it because they try to make a character suffer and, you know, use the freaking mind, they use the dreams, and you don't go past any step. You don't take a step. You don't creative, and so you get this lame, unoriginal, and uninspired mess that this was. And to add at the top of that, we get a literal Plankton with literal suicide quote saying, "I'm just gonna let the bus, like the 3 o'clock bus, run me over." Now, you could say that's dark humor, but you can't in this case. You know what dark humor would have been? If you taken the point where he gets kicked out of his house and single cell anniversary, and then you added that makes sense. That is some decent potential for a dark joke, because the rest of the episode is not trying to convince you that his intent is to actually kill himself. It's just him being over the top. But this episode, he is just he literally wants himself dead. Then the end of the episode doesn't do it any justice at all. I mean, okay, this episode sucks beyond belief, but this ending really, I don't get it. SpongeBob says good-natured, and how are you gonna say good? Now I know the show is inconsistent. But after Pal for Gary, you can't even consider the season good-natured, and we were only a couple episodes in. You have any idea what that freaking episode did to SpongeBob? And then he says, "Oh, I'm good-natured." You freaking sat around and watched the giant animal monster prey on your pet. And then you yelled at the pet whenever he fought back. Really, you're good-natured. All right, yeah, I found out how to believe. And so, and then freaking Plankton does some research, and then he brings a mime in, and then actually gets on Krabs because he's afraid of mimes. I mean, hey. Then SpongeBob literally says, "You shouldn't be laughing. Look behind you." And then there's a bunch of whales that just show up, but then Plankton buries himself. That's literally how the episode ends. He buries himself beneath the Krusty Krab. Then it's revealed that SpongeBob was just using a freaking projector, okay? I don't even know how that works. Because when they just show up on the door, it looks like they were showing up past the door. It doesn't make any sense. Even if it's glass, it's still a surface. How do you not understand that, writers? So this episode is... Do not watch it, okay? Avoid this episode like the plague. As a matter of fact, I would invite the plague to my birthday party before considering watching this episode. 0.5. Abysmal.
0. Next episode, Gary in Love.
Wow. Okay, you know what? I am getting tired of this episode. People are saying that it makes up for fricking One Course Meal. I've seen people say that it's a total gem. It's not. It's over. It's honestly kind of boring for most of it. And it's just so stupid. It's so stupid. It's a typical love cliche. I mean, it's not awful, but it's boring for so much of it. So Gary falls in love, and then that's it. He just goes on a wild chase. A bunch of other bully pets decide to break a store. Then it ends with the typical like French buff chin man from France, the snail really, taking the girl away, and then the bully who spent the entire episode rivaling him said, "Let's go get some." Like, doesn't make any sense. Let's go get some food. Like, I don't get that. It's just stupid. I'm gonna give like a 5 out of 10. It's stupid.
It's boring. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it's pretty average. Next, Rodeo Days.
Wow, yo. Honestly, I hate this more than One Course Meal.
Wait. The plays, the things. That plays.
This I do too. I don't hate One Course Meal. Okay, it sucks, but I don't hate it.
No.
My most hated episode is actually in season 12. But this is the plays the thing.
Yeah, that's the wrong episode name.
This might just be the most boring episode of the entire show history. Honestly, it might be. Actually, okay, well, it's not the, but it's definitely one of them. So what happens here is that frickin' Squidward wants to have a play, and then his idea, and then he submits it to a playwright, and then it's rejected. You know, so they decide that, wait a minute, let's have it in the Krusty Krab, so we could charge people more. And throughout the whole episode, we get Squidward in this boring, long, drawn-out play. Like, the lines are so separated. It's specifically meant to feel like it will never end. And then frickin' SpongeBob hits people with these two, not one, because they weren't smart enough, but two, like, character speeches where they try to convince everybody that, wait a minute, this guy's not wrong all along. It tries to make people say, oh gosh, I didn't consider that. And how he's answered with people throwing, like, hurt patties at him. Like, bro, that's supposed to hurt. And then Krabs makes money off it. And then the episode, we just get Squidward and SpongeBob laughing at the camera as they are used.
Next episode is Rodeo Days.
I'm gonna go, before we do that, I didn't give my rating. I'm gonna give it 3 out of 10 for that stupid episode. Boring as crap. And then Rodeo Days was even worse. Like, where this was a pairing. This had to be one of the most stupid pairings in history. Not one of the worst, but clearly one of the most stupid and low intelligence. Dear God. Ugh. Can we just say that this is probably the cheesiest ending, or one of the cheesiest endings for any SpongeBob episode?
Yep.
Yes. Let me get my charger, which is over here. So basically, in this episode, we get Sandy going to a rodeo, and then everybody tries to stop her, even though she's not in any danger, because she literally mentions that she's a champion. And then we get some awful stereotypical song. Like, bro, this is lame. It's just ear sore. Okay, bro. Then SpongeBob. The thing about this though is that even though they like, everybody is not inclined to help her. Back in the day, the characters would help each other, but they don't give a crap about each other now. You ever realize that? Like, have you realized that in season 7, 6, and 8? Actually, 8 not really, but 6 and 7 absolutely.
After themselves.
Yeah, the characters become way more selfish, and usually they're so like outgoing. So why are they being turned into this two like total a-holes? Like, it doesn't make sense. Hold on, you cover these next couple seconds. I'm gonna put this charger in.
I mean, I got nothing to add for this episode.
Well, I can add. Here we go. All right, there we go. I found it.
I feel like nothing to add doesn't really mean anything.
This episode, it gets so low IQ, bro. Like the imagery, and then the ending. Well, I didn't explain it. I said it was cheesy, but ending, it's just a live act. It's SpongeBob literally kidnapping the whole town of this boring, long, drawn-out episode with awful jokes. Patrick literally trying to chase his own butt for some reason.
Forgot about that.
That's stupid. Like, this is supposed to be funny. Who would be laughing at this? Okay, not even a dumb 5-year-old would be laughing at this. They'd be. I've honestly had a cousin over for this episode. A good example. He said, "What is he doing? Is this supposed to make me laugh?" They're literally, dude. Even the kids don't find this funny. So who is supposed to? And then SpongeBob kidnaps them, the whole town, in his house. Though using a whole bubble, and then he magically transforms to Texas. I'm not sure how it goes there exactly. And then Sandy gets distracted by their appearance, and then goes to the rodeo, and then a live action that looks awful. It looks so bad. And Sandy freaking saves SpongeBob from being eaten by a bullfrog.
Seemed like it was intentionally trying to be cheesy.
Yeah, I'll give it a 1.6 out of 10. I hate this episode.
Grammy's secret recipe is next.
Well, this was boring and honestly just kind of lame. Like, didn't she came back for another episode later, and it was slightly better. It wasn't exactly like a world better. It was just kind of mediocre. But this one was just bad. It was not good. It was slow. Do you see some of the paces for this season are ridiculously slow. Like, they're relentless. Want to steal your time, and they'll do nothing. They have like enough content for like 5 minutes, like double the time. You're gonna be bored out of your mind. And I was bored watching this. It was about Plankton disguising himself as his grandma because she's sleeping or whatever, to try to steal the Krabby Patty formula, and then it's boring, and then a bunch of lame. We can't even call them jokes. Just boring. We'll give it like somewhere in the 3 to 4 range. It's just awful. Don't watch this.
Yeah, you're right about the pacing thing. Waste of time. I agree with your rating. Pretty boring. Next, The Scent of Money.
Wow. A most underhated episode, really. This
Gary abuse.
Actually, I said. Okay, I'm thinking about this. This is a little bit better than I know. I gave them the same rating, but I made a mistake. So much in the situation with Candy. I realized that episode I'm gonna give it 1.2, but this is certainly not much better. Because this we didn't have enough. This is probably the most underhated episode of the entire series. And
I mean, the reason why is
it's the other. Yeah, it's the other Gary episode of this season.
Well, at least this one, Gary got justice. That's why.
It's not as infamously atrocious as Pal for Gary, but it is awful in its own right. It is so bad because crabs. We already had one course meal. Why would this make it any better? We freaking had crabs using Gary, who somehow attracted money. We had him go around town using Gary as the money magnet because he would have coins randomly pop on his shell. Like they would show up on his shell because of a magnetic force that he randomly had. I don't know why is it. We'll find out later. I'll explain that later. And then freaking he even takes to the whole arcade where the money goes overload and gives SpongeBob ridiculous tasks like paint the whole Krusty Krab in a Western style or whatever. With a freaking, although the Western style did kind of look cool. I like that actually, the way it looked. But it was done with a toothbrush. It was supposed to be time consuming, and it showed it was neglectful to not only SpongeBob but to his pet as well. SpongeBob even came to Gary's aid, freaking ranting on Mr. Krabs right to his face on why he's bad as a boss and why he's a bad person because he freaking trying to take all the money. Hide Gary in his stomach and pretend to be a pregnant woman, then to take all the money, and then while keeping Gary in disguise so no one notices. Then Gary decides to bring the whole mother load of coins to him in this magnetic force, and then Krabs, gets crushed by it. And then Krabs does kind of get what he deserves in the end. The entire freaking everything he collected in the arcade equates to the medical bill he has to pay, so he loses all the money he got in there. But still. It's about the journey, not the destination. And this episode sucked. So 1.3 out of 10.
1.5. The ending was amazing. Next, the monster who came to Bikini Bottom.
I already talked about being boring and all, but man, nothing happens in this episode. It's just the title, a monster who's in Bikini Bottom, and Patrick befriends him. It's boring. There's not much I can add. He just has a monster and it just walks around. Boring. It's like on that 3 range. Forget this episode. It's boring.
Yep, I agree. Next episode.
Literally nothing happens in it, bro. Ugh.
Welcome to the Bikini Bottom Triangle.
Oh, the thing disappeared. Well, okay. So the monster of Bikini Bottom was the start of a Legends series when they were trying to do Legends. Legends like based on movies. They were based on old movies, I could tell. And this one, I don't remember which movie it's from, but this one was clearly the best. Now, it wasn't like go out of your way anything you see, but it was just okay. I found it interesting how the concept of, storing into different places in the earth, it was teleportation, but it was activated by these 5 mermaids and their singing voice, which actually was kind of good. Given this, again, the singing jokes in this season were just painful. Good, I guess. It was uneventful, but at the same time, there's a really likable one-time character in it. The guy who was warning him about the thing. And then even when he took over, he captured Plankton while keeping the restaurant afloat, cooking the burger. That was good. It wasn't good. It was just okay. 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Fair. Next, the Curse of Hex.
I don't remember this episode. It's lame. I just remember that. And the disgusting woman in there who drooled. That was disgusting, man. What was it over? Like a laundry token? I don't know. So this woman comes to Bikini Bottom and she looks gross, hideous, disgusting. And then it's about a laundry token, and then they follow this quest, and then they battle this sea monster or whatever. It looks lame. And then the episode just kind of ends. So anywhere below 4 is pretty fair for me.
The main drain.
Wow, honestly, this episode is the same thing in this episode. I'm just gonna say the same thing happens. It literally nothing happens in this episode. I already talked about that with frickin' the monster bikini bottom. But when you had to brand your next couple of episodes to try to give them substance, to try to say that something special would happen, and literally nothing does, it's pathetic. In this episode, Patrick and SpongeBob learn about a drain that, when plugged, it will create a whirlpool that will suck up all Bikini Bottomites. Then they ask Krabs and Plankton about it. And then they give different answers. Krabs actually tells them, but Plankton says it doesn't exist, specifically to keep them away from it. Then they do find it, and then they pull it. But the thing is, there are 3 different times where the thing is pulled. 2 for flashbacks, and 1 when it's actually pulled. But then it's revealed that it's a dream. And they're the same thing, honestly, the whole time. And oh my goodness, like, it's so boring. I'll give it a 3.6. It's just a genuine waste of time.
I say it's a 5 compared to the next episode, which is Trench Billies.
At least something happened in one course meal. If I'm gonna completely crap on it, but at least something happened. But this, and Trench Billies, easily the worst out of them. Whereas every single one of them was based on the movie, the Legends episodes. This was not. I couldn't find a movie about this. Gross, disgusting. How about that? How about we just take all the gross, disgusting elements that nobody wants to see and freaking the series, and we cram it into one episode just because. SpongeBob and Patrick go jellyfishing, and then they smash their faces together, and then randomly they fall off this cliff. Big cliff, by the way, which is randomly put there. Wasn't the Jellyfish Fields cliff before the brain coral, and now it's the freaking practically a different dimension. The sky looks different, the land looks different, and they fall into this potty room where they land on some guy who's using the can, and then they bunch of stereotypically ugly trench billies, some redneck hoohickeys. They're disgusting. They have no eyeballs. Their eyes are freaking shadowed. Like, I don't understand how you can make them so ugly. They're fat. The teeth look disgusting. They do disgusting things. This entire episode was disgusting. One of the episodes you genuinely don't want to eat food while watching. And if it didn't help that it was also lame at the same time, it was so uncoordinated. Like, what was supposed to be the whole point of this episode? Just because we're gonna add these guys in to gross you out? There's literally an episode where someone drinks freaking goo corn, and then they burp it out, and that's disgusting. And then they do hillbilly activities to prove that they're not outsiders. The plot is incoherent, by the way. It's incoherent. But literally what happens, Patrick has a banjo off where he uses SpongeBob in like a string with the tie to his nose and then his feet or whatever. And then he banjos off for some guy with an actual banjo. And then at the end of the banjo off, the guy explodes. Like, what the heck, dude?
Some weird stuff.
And then they get back to the Krusty Krab. And then the Trench Billies invade when Squidward and Krabs are in there. And then we get one of the most unsatisfying endings I've ever seen. We get Krabs being forced to marry the disgusting Trench Billy mom just because he accidentally looked at her. Well, I don't know, but I think. And then we get him driving in a limousine, and then it says, like, just married on it. And then that's disgusting. 0.9 out of 10.
1.
Not 9. I would say if it was 9, it would be 9 out of 100. But this episode was specifically designed to be boring and disgusting. An awful combination.
Dreadful.
I hate this.
Sponge Cano.
Well, if it didn't already help that we just got the 5th worst episode. Sponge Cano was nothing stellar. In fact, it was pretty bad in its own right. We get this bikini bottom dolphin mystical man who's somehow different from the one we got in the second movie. Bubbles versus, I don't even know what this guy's called.
Dolphin Warrior.
And then he says randomly, a volcano will consume the most miserable person. And then he goes away, and then everybody says, look at Squidward, he's miserable, ha ha. And then it ends with people trying to throw him in. But then SpongeBob saves him. But then then it turns out his house, because of a leaked pipe that was randomly inserted in there just because, catapults Squidward house into the volcano. And then, that's my house. And Squidward goes, that's not me. That's my house. And then the guy says, oh yeah, you didn't let me finish. What I meant to say was this was going to be the most miserable person's house. Like, that's so forced and it's so lame. So anywhere but below a 4, because I haven't seen this recently, but I know it sucks, is extremely justifiable. This episode is a waste of time. It's just stupid and dumb. And I said stupid and dumb a lot of times, but that was an actual quote used in the season. So you should really understand, try to comprehend exactly how brain dead and idea deserted this season was.
Absolutely. Next, the Great Patty Caper.
We've made it out of the legends, and we've made it to the second SpongeBob special of the season. But you know, they actually made a good one. Now, the first half was really nothing special, but it picked up in the second half with good jokes, the good action, good stuff. It was a mystery. He wanted to get the thing away, the secret formula away from Plankton. But of course, he gets it on a train, but of course he forgets the secret formula. I mean, bruh. At least I think this would happen. He forgets the key. Either that, or he forgets the key to the vault of which it was in. The formula was in. I don't know. It was something like that. Yeah. And then they get in the train. They have this mystery thing, and then it just gets so weird. But at the same time, the second half really does bring this episode up. They have a lot of action in it. We get some cool stuff. We get SpongeBob seeing him as a freaking hang glider. Good animation on that, by the way. And then we get them running through the train, going about. And then Plankton cuts the things. He cuts the engine part of the train away from all the rest of the freaking. I don't know what they're called. They're like little cars in the train. I don't know. I forget. All right, but but he cuts them away, so SpongeBob and Patrick are continually going on this train. And then now I know Patrick, we talked about him being dumb, but in this one they actually do it funny. He actually tries in this episode to do something good. It's a stop sign. But I don't know how Patrick is faster than a freaking raging train, by the way. But then he decides he does 3 things, which I thought were all actually not bad, especially for a character who's taking so much damage. The first one, he does a stop sign, and of course it fails. The second, he builds a lemonade stand. It's pretty unrealistic. He can build a whole lemonade stand running in front of a train doing that. But that didn't work. And then he tried to throw a rock in front of it so that it would stop, but then it actually been floating on the air. And then there's a really good joke, by the way. There's a really good joke. It was going to hit the senior center. And then there are 2 guys playing cards, and then one guy who's facing the train says, "There's a train behind you." And then the other guy says, "How many times are you going to pull that today?" Like, that's funny. That was actually not a bad joke. And then it ends with freaking them running into the bank or whatever where he was going to put the secret formula. And then they run over Plankton with the train, and then they get the secret formula in time. But then Kratz got to pay for the damage because the train did run into the bank. So I'll give it a 7.
I agree. It's an underrated episode because of the season.
Absolutely.
That sinking feeling.
Well, I don't know why, but I think this actually won a freaking Emmy. I'm not sure why this episode. It wasn't bad. It was just boring. It was really boring the whole time. But not aggressively boring, to be fair. There was one decent joke in this. I mean, it was the typical Patrick being dumb joke. No need to thank us. Thank you! You're welcome. So, little tiny jabs like that in comedy can do an episode. They could have one bright moment in the episode. Unfortunately, the rest of the episode was kind of boring. SpongeBob and Patrick can't play around, so they decided to go underground because Squidward doesn't let them to play on their lawn. They play beneath his lawn. So they play, yeah. So they play around with that, and then what you know, as Squidward finds out because they submerge his house, and then they end up digging so much they submerge the entire town. I don't know. It's just a weird episode. 5.1. But I can't really dislike it.
6. Karate Star.
Wow. Now, this one's tough because at the same time, it was Patrick trying. He did save SpongeBob's life, but he did also go out of control. But at the same time, he at least tried to keep control, I guess. But it was when he was chopping everything. I don't know. It was Patrick freaking. He learned karate, and then he had the perfect chop. He literally chopped the freaking cinder block in half perfectly, and then chopped their freaking entire ass boat in half perfectly. Then I don't know why this episode went the way it did. It was so weird. And then he uses his chop to get ice cream for these fun shorts. Patrick, of course, got like a paper clip for a wallet. Like, he got money, he pays some paper clips, but whatever. His hand starts to get a little out of control, and then when that happens, freaking he tries to stop it, including trying to stop the chop with another karate chop, and then his hand goes on a rampage. We literally see him floating because his hand is the first thing in front of him, and he chops a bunch of TVs, and a whole bargain mart store. Actually, no, what's that store called in SpongeBob? I don't know.
Don't know.
Yeah, but he chops the whole thing down. And then he actually feels sympathetic, so he cuts his own arm off. Then, unfortunately, he grows it back, but at the same time, but then he reveals, after the store is built, his entire other arm can grow a different body, because that's how starfish work. I don't understand that.
I think that's how it works, yeah.
The other Patrick, who just randomly spawned, freaking chops the whole place down, and it falls, after they built it again. I really don't know what to say about this episode. It's bad. It's just, it's incomprehensible. There's so much that's happening at once.
Another bad.
So I'm gonna give it a
4.7.
4.7. Yeah, it's just a bad episode. It's just dumb and stupid and wow.
4 stars. Next, 4 out of 10. Buried in Time.
I was gonna say 4 stars is a little bit okay, but Buried in Time. So in this episode, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get locked in a time capsule when Krabs realizes things can be more valuable when they're brought up later. Then Plankton gets in, and we just get a really boring episode. It's pretty lame. And then Squidward, and then they play a prank on Squidward where he does it's shaving cream. So they give themselves beards, and then Squidward gets a beard. And it's like, oh my goodness, I look old. Has it really been 50 years already? And then he goes up, and then nothing happens. And then Plankton trying to get it, and then he gets, I don't know, he's trying to get it, but he had his mouth open, and then Squidward accidentally stepped on him, and then just kept walking. He didn't notice it. And then we get a literal poop finish. Plankton pooping out the formula or whatever. Ugh, come on, dude. 3.9. This is just a stupid episode.
Technically, he got the formula, which is different. Okay, Enchanted Tiki Dreams.
Here we go. Wow. With all the stuff they gave him to him recently, and the way this was going at first, which is pretty bad, you would have thought this would have been another Squidward torture episode. However, in the second half, I think, is pretty fair time distribution, they build Squidward a whole tiki land. And it looks great, the song is great, the beat is great, and the visuals are cool, and everything is done so well to make it look so peaceful, so Squidward can finally get his peace. After being annoyed in the first half, they genuinely do make it up in the second half. What a great, incredible second half this episode had, even if the first half was bad. But it was clearly built up to that episode. We knew we would get a payoff somehow. And we get Squidward's Tiki Land, where he gets to have a luxurious vacation in this Tiki Land until Patrick accidentally falls into one of the tikis, and it's revealed that it was constructed by SpongeBob and Patrick overnight using earwax instead of glue for some reason. I mean, even though neither of them have ears, how would they even get earwax? And even if they did that much to build a whole freaking civilization out of it, and then right when you think it was going to end bad for Squidward, it turns out the tiki boat he was in is left standing, and so SpongeBob and Patrick literally give up their bodies. They keep being hit like back and forth while Squidward's on this like pirate ship ride, and they keep standing there. They have smiles on their faces, which means that they're in on it. And Squidward's laughing. And, genuinely good finish. 7.5. Easily one of the best episodes of the season.
8. Good.
Wow. I thought you didn't like this episode. I thought you told me you didn't like the episode recently. But
Next
dang.
episode, the Abrasive Side.
Alright. Pretty lame, this was. Wouldn't you agree? But at the same time, it was lame, but actually not bad. Now, the concept was lame, but the episode itself actually presented some interesting ideas. SpongeBob was unable to say no, so he got an abrasive side, a green palette on the back of him that had a face in it. And whenever he was asked to do something unreasonable, he would sharply reply no. But there was some good stuff with this episode. Krabs getting what he deserves with overtime. And the Squidward part was good. I wouldn't hang out with you for all the money in Krabs' mattress. And the Squidward actually has a happy reaction to that. I like the concept of this episode. The concept that SpongeBob can't say no, so he gets them to help him say no. And then it goes overboard. So then he gets it off by Sandy literally ripping it off with her weirdly muscle man hands. And then it ends with SpongeBob's grandma getting one for some reason, I guess. I don't know. 7. No. Bad concept turned good.
Yeah, I agree. Sounds like a pre-movie episode. Earworm.
Earworm is... Oh, right, that's what happened. So SpongeBob gets this musical doodle tune stuck in his head, and then everybody tries to get it out of his head, which I thought was thoughtful. I said before they weren't willing to help him, but this episode they were. And it ends up being stuck in Squidward's head after he has this really noisy clarinet solo. And then it ends the episode with Squidward just getting it in his head. So I'm going to give it 6.5. It's a decent episode.
I agree. Hide and win what happens.
Wow. Dumb jokes in this episode. Patrick not understanding hide and seek. It just gets so lame and boring at the time. It's hard to comprehend that this episode was actually a thing. It's them playing hide and seek, but Patrick doesn't know what it is. So he goes home and freaking hides in this rock, and then SpongeBob literally looks all over the world for him, and then meets even to a point where he's like at the brink of the edge of the place of unknown, and then he meets this freaking Patrick Notstar who says it's about having fun, which is good, but then SpongeBob writes a letter, and then at the end of the episode, Patrick goes, "I got one question. What's hide and seek?" So I don't get it. I just 3 range, just stupid.
Yeah, shellback shenanigans.
Another one of those, robot crowds episodes. So this one he starts to be Gary. It's lame, but not awful. The pill scene is disturbing when he takes the giant pill, and then what comes out of his mouth to that? That's disgusting. Pretty uneventful, pretty lame, but at the same time not appalling. So I'm probably gonna give it like 5 to 4, somewhere in there.
4. Next, the masterpiece.
Masterpiece. Oh goodness, this episode was not a masterpiece. Granted, it wasn't exactly bad. It was just boring, and it was just uneventful. So Squidward tries to frickin' construct a statue because Krabs wants a statue for a promotional gimmick, but it ends up being an artistic piece and not an actual childish plaything like he wants. I don't know. There aren't many jokes in this episode. It's not good. I mean, there is one decent one about Tuna who ran a marathon, but it ends with Krabs being painted in gold, being forced to stay the way he is. Somewhere in the... I don't know. I'll give it 4.7. It just was kind of lame.
5. Welk Attack.
Alright, we got a decent episode. I say good actually. I'll give it 7. 7. In this episode, a bunch of angry whelks attack, or perceived to be angry whelks. They attack the Bikini Bottom. But in reality, they were overgrown because they had a cold. I don't know. But the graphics are done nicely. You know, it actually seemed like a threat for once. Actually, I'll go back to decent. This is 6.5. What am I saying? There's one scene that I don't like about this. Is that freaking... Is just... Patrick doing the thing with his tongue, and it goes on for way too long. So I'm gonna drop it to 6.5 for that. That just got annoying. But other than that, this episode was decent, but like nothing must see.
Which is fair. Next, you don't know Sponge.
Patrick forgets SpongeBob. That's all I could say. He thinks he literally says, "What shape is my best friend?" Pass. This was a survey, by the way. And so SpongeBob tries to make other friends, I don't know, or something like that. And then Patrick ends up buying something nice for him or whatever. I don't know. It's just inconsistent and boring. And none of it makes any sense. So, 3 range. We're going to give it like, I'll give it 3.5. It was just so stupid.
It's ridiculous. Tunnel of Glove.
Okay, what happened in Tunnel of Glove is that Pearl was going on a ride, but then SpongeBob said that he will go too, and then of course Pearl's friends were around, and then they started acting like he was his boyfriend, or she was like he was her boyfriend. I don't know. It was weird. And then Patrick, being dumb, the idiot he is, he freaking sets off a bunch of alarms to try to save SpongeBob. That ends up sending the ride into like overdrive or whatever. I don't know. 4.5. It was not good.
Weird. Next, Krusty Dogs.
Krusty Dogs. It was nice seeing SpongeBob and Squidward work together after they randomly decided to take off the Krusty Krab from the menu and replace it with the Krusty Dog, because it was somehow more marketable. Although Squidward did get treated unfortunately with the end, with the adult freaking kicking him in this costume that he was supposed to wear. But you know, not too bad throughout. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's just
6.5 range. The Wreck of Mauna Loa.
Mauna Loa. Oh, this episode also a 6. You know, kind of obvious, at the same time somewhat enjoyable. It had a somewhat enjoyable, feel to it. So I'll give it a 6.
Mr. Krabs got karma. Next, New Fish in Town.
Not good. This is not good. A new neighbor moves in because Patrick has a sale. I don't even know what it is a sale for. I don't know. I don't even know what it's supposed to be. I don't know. But a new fish moves in, and Squidward actually ends up liking him a lot. But then he gets exposed to SpongeBob and Patrick, and then uncharacteristically, because he doesn't like Bubbles, and he doesn't like Patrick's whole personalities. Uncharacteristically, freaking decides to pop Bubbles randomly at the end, and then literally everybody jumps off a cliff in this episode. That's how the episode ends. Squidward tries to pop Bubble, but then it leads him off a cliff. I don't know, but below 4, or actually 4 range, I guess, but
4
not
for
either.
Squidward. Next, Love That Squid.
Ooh. This one's hard to rank. At the same time, because Squidward did get the W when he fell in love with this woman who looked like a squid, who was a squid. We don't see squids very often. But at the same time, the episode throughout was boring and unreasonably awkward.
And it doesn't.
So I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give it 5. It's just I like Squidward getting the W, but it doesn't make sense.
5, pointless. Next, Big Sister Sam.
This is the second last episode, I think, of this season.
You're right.
Luckily, the season did go out with a good way, but this episode specifically, no, it did not. Didn't he say he didn't have a sister in Something Smells?
Something like that.
And he gets a spin-off show where he gets his own little baby squid sister. I don't understand Nickelodeon.
Fuck Nickelodeon.
But yeah, honestly, in 2021 they suck, yo. We'll probably do I don't know. I might just do a separate video for that. But the gorilla-like Sister Sam comes to town and destroys Patrick's. No, he destroys SpongeBob and Squidward's house just for fun. And Squidward gets upset, but SpongeBob has to side with Squidward. But also, he tried to be like a peacemaker, but he also understands Squidward's case. It's unfair that his thing was getting destroyed. And right as Patrick started to understand, freaking Big Sister Sam called everybody a bully. I don't understand that. And then she smashed Patrick's house into Patrick. And then she went away. I don't understand that. This is just awful writing. 3.2.
2. It's a very underrated episode.
Yeah, it just sucks. And the last one is Perfect Chemistry. This is an episode that revolved around fart jokes, but strangely delivered in that aspect. So Plankton decided to team up with Sandy because he needed a transportation device that could transport solids. And Sandy had, of course, this nut transporter. But, you know, the fart jokes were actually not bad. They were nicely timed. You know, it was Squidward telling Mr. Krabs to go look because it was randomly one part of his body appearing, whether it was eyes or nose or mouth. And then of course it left the smell when it went behind. So Krabs thought that Squidward did the gas or whatever. He dealt the smell. And you know, actually a good episode and an awful season. So I'll give it a 7.5.
Don't really remember this episode, but I'll go between 6 and 7.
Yeah, good stuff. And a surprisingly good way to close off an abhorrent season.
Yep.